Hola, esto es Conversaciones y el día de hoy tenemos un invitado súper especial. Estamos en este espacio de conversaciones creado para ayudarte a ti con tu ministerio y con tu liderazgo. Sabemos que son tiempos complicados, sabemos que a veces cuesta hablar con gente que de verdad entienda por lo que estamos pasando, y el hecho de ser un tipo de modelo de iglesia muy enfocado en la gente de afuera, diferente a muchas iglesias, a veces se vuelve hasta solitario. Nos dimos a la tarea de buscar una persona que supiera lo que es liderar un tipo de iglesia como la que estamos liderando, que tenga un poco más de experiencia que algunos de nosotros, y que pudiera darnos un poquito, sus 2 centavos, como dicen en Estados Unidos, sobre qué ha estado aprendiendo y qué ha estado haciendo. Vamos a tener la oportunidad de conversar con Scroggins, pastor de Bucket Church en Atlanta, Georgia, y vamos a poder preguntarle sobre comunicación, sobre innovación, sobre liderazgo, inclusive sobre esta nueva tendencia de consumismo en la iglesia, donde la iglesia o los mensajes o todas las cosas que se hace simplemente es algo más que se consume. Entonces, hoy vamos a tener la oportunidad de hablar de eso, vamos a poder hablar sobre el futuro, y al final les recomiendo quedarse al final, porque simplemente en la última frase y el último consejo que da Clay a todo esto, solo eso es oro puro y vale la pena quedarse hasta el final. Así que los dejo. Esto ha sido traído por ustedes por parte de Eddie Network, que trata de crear comunidad, contenido y coaching personalizado para cada uno de ustedes. Thank you very much, Clay. It's been almost 2 years since you've been here in Mexico for our conference, Drive en Español. So it was glad to call you, to talk to you back again in the middle of the COVID situation. So, Clay, you were telling me just a minute ago, you guys started coming back to the office a month ago?
Yeah, we opened up the office, I guess, end of June. So we're now, as of recording this, mid-July. So it's been almost a month. Yes.
And you have been as a lead pastor in Buckhead for 11 months already, right?
Yep. Almost 1 year. Yeah.
Almost 1 year. And you have been, a lot has happened in a year for you, right?
Yeah, it's been a wild year to be here.
Well, okay. So, like I said, we wanted to ask you some broad questions and try to narrow it down to certain conversations in your experience as a lead pastor. And I've been talking to pastors in the last couple of weeks, telling them, actually bragging that I was going to talk with you today. And one of the things that people has been telling me, and they have noticed, is that you try to be kind of one step ahead most of the time, trying to see what's going on in your preaching, in your communication. I remember when you began using the LED screen.
The board that lights up that you can write on. Yeah.
Everybody was like, what is he doing? And then I remember at the beginning of this year, you started using the 2 LED screens on both of your sides. And then you walked around Bucket for 8 years.
Yeah.
So tell me, what motivates you to always try to innovate with your communication?
Well, I don't know if I hope I'm not. There's probably an element of it where I just get bored. So some of it is my personality, but I don't want to just innovate to innovate. The goal is to communicate in the most helpful, meaningful, memorable way possible, so that God might use it to change people's lives. So the board, writing on the board, I believe there were a lot of partner churches at this event where a guy came in to talk about some of the neurology of the way our brains remember things and process information. And he read a bunch of data around, if you hear something, you're this likely to remember it. If you hear something and see someone write part of it out, it was like 4 times more, 3 times. I mean, it was significantly more likely to remember it. And then actually the next level is using, pictures, writing things. I mean, when you write something, people kind of hang on the word And then you can also write something that will stay up there that people can look at the whole time. But all the different elements add to people's ability to remember or to process what you're talking about. So using object lessons, using pictures, video, writing, and then more than just the spoken word. So I think that's what I'm trying to mess with. But the predominant thing is probably Andy Stanley is such a fabulous communicator that I'm just constantly trying to keep up with what he's doing, basically.
Yeah, well, you were the first one preaching outside the church when you went to the restaurant, when you gave that. I remember that message. I mean, I remember the Decatur City pastor, he did it on the backyard after that, but you always seem to be in front. What motivated you guys to decide, not for the topic for Atlanta, we understand that, we actually love that branding, but to the fact that you guys decided to do that series the way that you did it, your communication, walking around, and it was so fresh, refreshing, and so different for everybody. And the other question will be, are you guys going to keep doing that? Or
Well, the COVID situation, we're not gathering together on Sunday mornings except online. And so that has, it just opens up the door to be able to do anything. I mean, anything's possible now because you don't have to be in the auditorium. I mean, we could have done that before, but there is something about being physically present in the room. And I know we use video, but video teaching because most Sundays we're watching a screen. But if I'm going to teach, it just felt like, well, let's do it in the room where the people are going to be. But then when this all hit, it doesn't take you long to realize, oh, we don't have to be in the auditorium. We don't have to record this in the auditorium. So we started thinking through, I guess the restaurant was the first step, because we really were just trying to highlight areas of the city where people would have normally been in, but they're not now. So it really was to be in one of the most popular restaurants in Buckhead. I mean, any, Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, it's a 2-hour wait to get a table there. So to be in that restaurant, I think we were there on a Friday at lunchtime, and it's completely empty. And we just thought that would be a really profound image that would enhance the communication, because it really speaks to what people are feeling, that, whoa, life is very different right now.
It was a great common ground, and people will relate to that. So I think that was what was very refreshing. And who made the call, or whose idea was it to walk outside around Buckhead?
Yeah, I would say similarly, we were trying to think, what's the mood that we want? What's the vibe? What's the message? What's the context for the message? And so we felt like it fit with the series, because the context of the series is, we're going to be known for something. We want to be known for being for our city. So it felt good to be in the city. Where I really wanted to be, I wanted to be in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, which I think that's what I'll probably do that for the next series, is I want to be just right in the middle of this massive stadium that's completely empty, because we have access to a place like that right now because nothing's happening in that stadium. So the roof opens on that stadium like on a camera, and so I would like for the roof to be open and do a message in the middle of that room in that stadium. But that didn't work out for that series, and so we thought, well, let's be in the city. And so I think I saw probably Carl Lentz of Hillsong, New York. He had done a message where he was walking around the streets of New York, just talking about what people were experiencing. And I thought, gosh, that is, I don't know. I thought it was just dynamic. And then, of course, Rob Bell years ago used to do those Numa videos. Did you watch all of those?
I have them here.
On your bookshelf?
Yeah.
Do you have them in Spanish? Did they translate those?
No, they never.
They're in English. Yeah, I mean, I remember being in student ministry when he did that. I was working that was probably 10 years ago, 12 years ago. It was a long time ago, which is really remarkable that he was doing things like that. You know, and the first time you watch one, you're just like, wow, that is so engaging, because he's not just, you know, like I am right now, just sitting in an office talking directly to the camera.
I remember using those videos as part of a talk, or just put subtitles in our youth group 15 years ago.
Oh gosh,
it was great.
Can you imagine how many youth groups played those as their loads of them? And so I think that's the other thing that probably this whole thing has brought back all of these memories for me, because in student ministry, we used to do stuff like that all the time. We used to do talks on video. We'd have a whole, you know, a 3-part series that we did on video, because it was more scalable. We could play it at multiple campuses, and same thing. We would use, you know, we would be out walking somewhere, you know, just trying to be like Rob Bell, probably.
So in some way, I'm trying to, the way that I'm understanding you is, to put it in a simple way, is the fact that everything has changed, has loosened up, or freed us up. Things, you know, freed us up to just trying to innovate, or trying to reach people in a different kind of way. So that's mainly, I think
that's well said. Yeah, and maybe to say it in a similar way, instead of communicating to an auditorium full of people, we're now communicating to individual people who are sitting on a couch. And so that's the other thing we've been thinking of, is what would be the most effective way to talk directly to a person who's sitting in their living room. And it might not be to be on this big stage. I think that's the challenge we're feeling right now, is we're trying to recreate everything that we were doing in a digital way now. Well, we shouldn't be thinking that way. We shouldn't be thinking, how do we recreate what we were doing? We should be thinking, no, how do we create what's best for the medium that people are going to receive this on? So how do we create the best kind of media that is directly to the person sitting on the couch? I think that's the way we should be thinking about content right now.
One of the things that we heard churches, we talk churches in 35 countries. So there's different contexts, different faces with COVID, but we have had churches that are deciding now to do not record services, but live services online. That's something that scares me, to be honest with, but it's so good, the fact that you can be able to interact. And I'll say that it will have to do a lot with the personality of the communicator. Have you guys thought about something like that?
Yep, for sure. I think I don't know why we made the decision early on to just drop everything on demand on Sunday. So our stuff releases at 9 a.m. on Sunday, and then it's just there, it's just available. Mm-hmm. But we are in August, we're going to try a series where it's live. And what I really want is the best of both worlds. I want to be able to maybe say hello to everyone, interact with people in the chat live, because I want the feeling of, hey, you got to be here at 9 o'clock to be able to get that. You know, we're all experiencing something together. So that's a very valuable emotion and a feeling and experience. But then secondly, I really like the ability to be able to create a message in whatever context you want to create it in. So if you want to be at the beach or at the lake or in the mountains to be able to create this message, we can do that. So what I hope is we'll be able to do a live beginning, then go to, music. We're still trying to figure out how does worship work online, but maybe then go to music that's been pre-recorded that's somewhere else, and then go to a message that's been pre-recorded that is in a spot that is specific to the message, and then do a live wrap up at the end. That would be my preference. That's what we're working toward. So it's kind of a live and on demand in a way.
Okay, so you guys will be evaluating that, and because one of the things that I've noticed is, and I'm shifting a little bit on the topic, is this consumer era that we're in, that everything people consumes. I had a person telling me the other day, consumerism came to church now. Now people can just watch on demand, and they have it as a
whatever church they want.
Whatever church they want. I have a friend who's in a small group in Elevation in North Carolina. She lives in Costa Rica, but she's in a small group in her local church too. And so, how are you guys? Maybe I'm not sure of the verb, but tackling this reality about not trying to. How are you guys working towards that?
Well, I think your assessment is fair. I think that is true, that we have created this more, or we are allowing, or people have a consumer mindset about church on Sunday. I guess we have to decide, is that something we want to try to fight, or do you want to leverage it? People can do it's not the church that's doing that. I mean, it's all of media is that way. I mean, I had a friend the other day who was asking me, what do I use? Netflix or Hulu or Apple or whatever, and I was like, we mostly do Netflix. And I was like, why do you ask that? And he's like, I'm thinking about moving over to Hulu because I think I finished Netflix. And I was like, what? Like you finished, like you watched everything? Well, not everything, but so, I mean, the amount of streaming that's happening, right? The amount of content that people are consuming right now, period, is massive amounts of I mean, these platforms like Netflix and Hulu, they can't even keep up with the amount. They can't produce enough content for the amount of content people are consuming. So it's not the church that's creating it. I mean, this is happening in culture, but at the same time, the church has always been about go and listen to hopefully practical or expository, whatever Bible teaching you think is most helpful or most powerful or most life-changing. So there is an element that is consuming, because when you are confronted with truth or confronted with God's word, it causes you to change things. I mean, there's probably been things that you've said that people have sat there in a seat and listened to words you said, and then went and did something different with their life, changed the way they were living, gave money, went and helped someone out. So we know that words change people. So there is a part of church that is consumer. We want people to consume great content. My kids, have you seen The Chosen? It's a new,
is it good?
It's phenomenal. It's a new series on the life of Jesus. And now my kids are all into it. And it's like tonight, it's what, we'll have dinner together and play outside or do something. And then before they go to bed, we usually will watch something, and they'll want to watch The Chosen tonight, which I'm not like, no, don't be consumers. I'm like, that's what the world is. And so we can fight it. And of course we have to have boundaries around it. And so we've got to create a kind of church that people want to engage with. I think that once they consume, that we're giving them pathways, that we're giving them steps. Is there a way they can serve? Is there a way they can get in a relationship with people? Is there a way they can have conversations about this? We use those simple terms. Our hope for people is that they would, it used to be come and listen. Now it's really get online and watch, and then gather and discuss, and then go and do. I mean, that's always been, there's an aspect of our faith and ecclesiology and church work that is that you want people to listen to a sermon and then sit around and talk about other people, and then go and do something different with their life because of it. So I guess I'm just saying, I'm not really interested in trying to fight against people's consumerism. I want to create the kind of church that once they consume something, it causes them to then do something different with their life. That's what I would prefer.
There was an interview with Lane and Rick Holiday on Northland Partners, and one of the things that they said that I've found it really simple but really profound, the fact that they said, we used to say a church where church people would love to attend. Mm-hmm. Now we want to say a church where the church people love to engage.
Just love.
Okay?
Yeah. So just love. I like just dropping it all together. that unchurched people just love it. Whatever it, all that it is. But yeah, it's not to attend anymore.
Mm-hmm. So my other thing, the other thing that I wanted to ask you was, now we're shifting, and that's another thing that I heard from that interview, is that we're shifting from a Sunday focus where everybody will come to church to an on-demand 7 days a week, where we're not only trying to connect with them once a week, but the whole week. That seems like a big shift. So how would you say, what are you guys doing, or what decisions are you guys making towards being able to engage with people 7 days a week?
I would say yes. Our hopes, I like the term 167, that we want to be a 167 kind of church. There's 168 hours in the week. We used to be all about the 1 hour on Sunday. Well, because of the internet, we've got this huge opportunity to connect with people outside of the 1 hour of the week. So yes, that is our hopes. We still have not figured that out yet. We haven't figured out how to do it. The majority of people that watch our services still watch at 9 and at 11 on Sunday, even though they're on demand and they can watch them anytime. The number of people that watch at 9 is larger than the number of people that watch the rest of the week. That doesn't include people that listen. That doesn't include our podcasts, which podcasts are meant to be a more on-demand type format. So yes, how's the world changing? The only thing that I mean, what do you watch that's live right now?
Not much.
I mean, there's two things people watch. They watch news and they watch sports. Those are the only two live things that I know of that people really watch live. Everything else is on demand, because you don't want to sit through all the commercials and you don't want to have to wait till next week for the other episode to come out. So I do think the world is eventually going to move that way, but part of our challenge is we're still in Sunday is still a cultural experience. I mean, one of the few remnants from the past is that you can't buy alcohol until after, I think it used to be you can't buy alcohol at all on Sunday. Now you can buy it at noon. But even that's kind of funny that we even have that law that you got to wait until noon to buy alcohol. I say that not because I'm trying to buy alcohol at noon on Sundays. I'm just saying it is still a cultural, there are sports on Sunday mornings, kids, youth sports, but it's still rare. It's not completely common. And so there's still kind of this leftover cultural sacredness to Sunday morning that is reserved for church. Well, that's going to change. I mean, it's already changing, but we just haven't seen it yet in people's rhythms, but surely it will eventually. And when it does, we've got to be ready to engage people wherever they are, whenever they need it. We live in just the society we live in. People they don't want to wait. I mean, I use this silly illustration of we have a Black & Decker handheld vacuum that broke, and I called the number to try to get it fixed, and they said, "Oh, you've got to come drop it off on the other side of Atlanta." It was like an hour away without traffic, between 9 and 4 Monday to Friday. Well, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to drive. And so I was like, that's ridiculous. There's no other option. And this lady got on the chat and she was like, hang on a second. And then she responded. She was like, let me go get my manager. And the manager came back. This is all on their chat, just on like blackanddecker.com, whatever. And she goes, what's your address? And I was like, this is my address. And she's like, we'll mail you a new one. You'll have it in 2 days. And I was like, thank you. And I was kind of frustrated that I had to wait 2 days. Like that's how the world works, that I'm like, I'm not going to drive an hour away. The consumer is demanding, I want what I want when I want it. So for us to say, for somebody to say, hey, I'm having depressive thoughts, can you help me? The answer of, yeah, come to a building, here's the address at 9 a.m. on Sunday morning. That's no, your business would go out of business if that was your option. I mean, you need to say, no, I have an option for you. Let me send it to you. Give me your email address now, you know.
I remember talking to some people at our church, and they were saying, if only you had a Wednesday night service, I will be there every week. And I was saying, why? I work too much. I need my sleep. And we were battling around that. And now that I hear you say that and everything that had happened, I'm like, yeah, I mean, it makes sense for most of them. Now,
which I think that's a missed opportunity. I mean, I think we've talked through that, and I don't know why we haven't done it yet, but we should be offering church services. I mean, you can watch it on demand whenever you want, but if there was a live component to it that you didn't want to miss, we should be offering that before, 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. on, different days of the week so that people don't have to wait. But I think those are the kinds of things that to start thinking 167, the other 167 hours, those are the things that that we need to be moving toward.
I've heard some pastors telling me that I have this pastor from Venezuela. He told me the only thing that I've seen that it's been hard for me is if I'm not on screen, whether it's a prayer or a devotional or an interview or whatever, every other day, I feel that I have to be online all the time. And I had another pastor from Mexico saying, I needed to get a break. I mean, I cannot. They want me. It's been hard to put somebody else, other teams. Have you experienced something like that, or what have you noticed on regard to that? Because I heard people tired of the screen, but I mean, some of us as pastors, we have to be on screen more than ever.
Yeah, I think that's all. I mean, 50 years ago, I'm sure it was, pastors were saying if they were trying to pastor a community, maybe people were calling them on the weeknights, or how do I disconnect and remove and set boundaries? If that's what you're asking, I think that's always going to be a challenge. How much is enough? And am I willing to go, all right, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a sermon this part of the week. I'm going to do a prayer thing this part of the week. And then I'm just going to have to trust that God's going to use that. And there's other people that can fill in the gaps. I think we have to be willing to set boundaries. But at the same time, the challenge is, people are walking around with their phone all the time. So they can always, they'll consume as much content as we can create, I think. So it's a great opportunity. We just have to figure out, I don't have a good answer, but I think your pastor friend is right. We got to figure out how to balance that.
I've seen that in your case, in Bucket, I've seen different faces, different people, even people that I never knew they were there because they were never on screen. Have you guys, how do you choose, or you just have people say, yeah, I'll do it, I like it, or people say, no, please don't put me on the screen, I just don't want to. How have you been able to manage that?
Yeah, it's both. I mean, there's a talent level. I mean, there are certain people that are good at it and certain people that are just, it's more challenging. But I would say it's real similar to putting people on a stage. I mean, there are people probably that are good at it and people that aren't. But yeah, that's it. I don't feel comfortable answering the question because I don't feel like we're doing a good job at that. I feel like that's a real challenge for us. Part of the challenge is, you get 50 sermons a year, which you don't anymore. Now, the great thing is if I wanted to just do a 3-part series, I could just drop it whenever I wanted to. So we're having those kind of conversations too. But, you get 50 Sundays where a certain amount of people are going to be tuning in. So Andy does about 35 of those. So then that leaves about 15. Well, I've been doing 12 to 15 sermons for the last 10 years. And I would love to do a few more. So that's a constant challenge for me is, it's hard for me to give up any of those 15 to help out other people, but we got to look in our student ministry areas. We've got we're trying to be more intentional about diversifying both in age, gender, skin color, and who's speaking. And we're doing not a great job of doing that. It's a lot of white men speaking at our churches. And that's got to, if it's the same in 5 years as it is now, I feel like we will miss an opportunity to reach a generation that is looking for a more diverse expression of the church.
Okay. I've seen that you have 5 kids, 4 or 5 kids?
5.
5 kids. I have 3. I had a friend, pastor, who asked me this question. They say we are. Let me see if I can get this phrase right. We are not the ones building the church for the next generation. But right now, it feels like we have grown and developed new things. Like I heard that it's every month it's been like a year of development. So it's been 4 years, real fast.
Yeah.
So my friend just wanted me to ask you, what do you see the church is going to be like for them? I mean, our kids are 10 years old. For them in 15 years or in 5 years, what are we looking for that we should be ready or, aiming or getting the terrain ready for them?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, we're all trying to figure this out, so who knows? But yes, it feels like 5 years of change has been compressed into a few months. It feels like we were already moving toward a more digital world where people are, the fact that you and I can do this and you're in Mexico and I'm in America and we're talking like we're right next door. Certainly there's I would not argue that it's the same and it's not the same quality. The verse I like to use is in one of John's letters. It's in 2 John chapter 1, verse 12. There's only one chapter, so it's just verse 12. But he says, I write to you with pen and ink, though I long to be with you face to face so that our joy may be complete. So there is something complete about being face to face. But because of this technology, we don't have to be. So I think what I hope to see in the future, in 5 years, the church that our kids have is still about relationship with God and relationship with each other. That there is still an element of they're exposed to great teaching. There's a desire to understand the Bible. And then there's an easy way to get into relationships where they're meeting on an intentional basis to have conversations around faith. I think that's what the church has always been about. And I think that's what the church will always be about. Now, there's all kinds of challenges in that. Like what you said, you can go listen to any preacher you want at any point in time. That's okay. One of the things I think it's okay, but one of the things we're trying to focus on is, I don't know that we can be the best online church in the world. That's not really our goal, is to be the best online church in the world. We can be the best local church for our community. And the world is getting bigger in one way and it's getting smaller in another way. I feel like everyone has an Apple phone, from Kanye to the 8th grade kid down the street. But then also people, and you can have friends all over the world. But at the same time, it's getting more local. People want to be in their community. There's a stronger desire to know their neighbors and to know the people that they live around. And there's more of a sense of identity and pride around the neighborhood you live in Atlanta now than there was maybe 10, 20 years ago. That, I think that's healthy. So I think technology is making the world big in a way. And I think this desire for local is making the world small. And I think the church has got to be big in the way we reach people all over the world, and then small in the way we still connect people into relationships. And I think that's the way we've got to, and serve our communities. That's what I hope the future of the church is.
Hey, that's just great. I now that you were saying about that, the fact that I was talking to a friend who leads church in Cuba, And I was asking him, how are you guys doing? I mean, we're all talking about online church, but is that even an option for you guys? And he was like, well, not really. Online is not. We do USB church. And I was like, what's a USB church? And he said, we record our services in a USB.
And then pass it around.
And they just pass it around. They have
Wow.
like 200 USBs and they send it around and then they pick it up and record again and they go back. So I went back and I talked to another pastor in Africa. And I was like, how is church online for you? And he said, no, it's a WhatsApp church. And what's that? We record it. It's just audio. We can't do video. And just the fact that this innovation, and that's the part where we started. It's been, I think it's been good for the church, for everybody to being able to loosen up and free themselves. But the question that I wanted to ask you is, you have 2 books on the how to lead when you're not in church. And please help me with the name of this.
Yeah, How to Lead in a World of Distraction.
Okay. Now, when I was preparing for this talk, I said, I'm going to ask Clay if he's been writing or thinking about how to lead in uncertainty in the middle of and maybe that's the question I wanted to ask you. How have you been, if you can sum it up in a couple of points or tips, how have you been able to, or how have you been leading in the middle of this uncertainty that we're going through?
I asked that same question today to Frank Blake, who used to lead a company called the Home Depot. Y'all have one in Monterey.
Mm-hmm.
He's on a bunch of boards. He's on Delta's board. He's on Grady Health Systems, one of the biggest hospitals in Atlanta. He's on Macy's, Procter & Gamble, makes a bunch of products. So I asked him the same question. What are you seeing? What are great leaders doing to lead in a crisis, in a situation like this? And he referenced Ed Bastian, the CEO of Delta, who's obviously been, in February, they were looking at the best year that they were ever going to have. And then by the end of March, they were thinking about how are we going to furlough people, or how are we going to adjust to a massively different world. So I think some of the things that he pointed out that Ed is doing are things that I don't know that I'm doing well, but are certainly things that I'm trying to do. First of all, I think great leaders are really able to be brutally honest about what's going on. So not being afraid to admit, hey, here's what's happening and this is hard. And I think the decision we made to say, hey, we're not going to gather at least through this year on Sundays was a significant decision. But I think it took some courage to say that, even though I think the feedback we've gotten from people is, wow, that's very startling and that's very sad. But at the same time, yeah, I think you're right. I think trying to be brutally honest with what we're experiencing. Number 2, trying to communicate with a sense of hope and a sense of optimism, even in the middle of really hard situations. I think that's what great leaders do, is that they are voices of hope and voices of optimism. Their head is not in the cloud, and not being willing to admit reality, but we have to be the voice of hope of, hey, we are going to get through this. It is going to come and it is going to go, and we can be better because of this, and God can use this to help us grow. And then thirdly, I think learning a new cadence of communication. People need to hear our voice during the season. So Frank recognized that that's one of the things that Ed Bastian has done really well, speaking directly to Delta shareholders, speaking directly to Delta employees on a regular basis, even when you don't have answers. And that's one of the things that I'm challenged with, is I usually want to wait until I have an answer for something to then speak to our congregation. But I think I'm trying to do a better job of speaking regularly to our congregation, even when we don't know the answers, even when we don't have answers. Hey, we recognize that it's really difficult for those of you that have little kids and those of you that have students right now. And we don't have great answers for how to help, but we just want you to know we hear you and we're working on it. I think that's better than not saying anything. so I think learning a new cadence of communicating regularly, and then communicating not just through text and email, but with our voice, I think those are hallmarks of great leadership in the middle of crisis.
And that's super helpful. You know, I can relate, especially to the last one, you know, because I feel also that what new do I have to say? I mean,
right.
Yeah, I still don't know.
Still bad. We still don't know. It's awful. Right.
How many times can I contact somebody just to tell them that? But at the end, the fact of, like you say, being brutally honest, open optimism, and a new cadence of communication. It's just great. So I would like to ask you one last thing, and it's maybe it's a little bit cheesy. Can you have or can you give if you could tell, you know, like a big audience, lead pastors just like you, people leading through a new kind of church that they never led before. That's what we're all doing. What it's some kind of advice that somebody has given you, or that you feel that you can give people in this time?
Yep. I want to look up this quote because I want to get it right, but there's a movie on Henry V, and there's a speech that he did on the Feast of Crispin, and I think it's the kind of speech that we need to be saying over and over again. Maybe I'll just paraphrase the quote, but things were bad, and things are bad now. This is what I'm telling our team over and over again is, hey, crisis is awful, but it is also, there is a gift that we have, that we get to be the ones that God has entrusted to lead our church through this. And there will be a day where things are better. And my hope is that we're going to look back on this season and go, I am so grateful that I got to be there when it was that bad, so that I could help lead our church through it and help lead our church out of it. So that when we are on the mountaintop and things are better and we're looking back, we can go, remember how bad it was then, things are so much better now. And I think there are going to be people that are going to be a part of what we're doing then that won't be a part of what's happening in the difficult time, that will almost look back and go, wow, what was it like back then? Tell me more, help us understand it. And will almost, I don't know that anybody will ever feel jealous or will ever wish that they were a part of this, but I think seeing this crisis as a privilege that God is allowing us to lead our churches through all of this, that's the kind of hope, the kind of perspective I want for our team, that this is not that we're going to one day look back on this and go, wow, I'm so grateful that I got to be a part. I got to be down there in the middle of the difficult times, and it's going to make the party and the other side that much more rich and that much more joyful, because we know how difficult this was now. So that's what I would encourage pastors with, and that's what I'm trying to encourage our team with.
Oh, kind of reminds me as Joshua was getting ready to cross the it's just,
I thought you were going to say Braveheart, William Wallace leading the people into
I could, but
yes, Joshua is a better example.
Well, thank you very much, Clay. I'm sure this conversation is going to help inspire a lot of leaders throughout Latin America and Spanish-speaking churches. So thank you very much again for your time. And
really glad to do it.
I hope we can talk more in the future.